I saw a movie called Better Man, which had a limited release here in the States at certain theaters. So it's not quite as limited as some movies might be. You know, whenever you hear limited release, you hear like maybe two or three theaters, one in LA, one in New York, one in Chicago. But I was able to get an early screening of the movie Better Man, just which is a Robbie Williams music documentary about his life that you may know from the previews, just seeing it in the previews. This is the music documentary that has Robbie Williams being played by an ape as the front man in this biopic, and so it comes out officially on January 17th. It has already been released in England. I think it released around Christmas time in England. It was their Christmas movie. And if you don't know, Robbie Williams is a boy band. He has a boy band origin, but he is very much kind of a singer-songwriter in England who I feel like is like a Michael Bublé with a harder edge, right? Is probably the description that you would need to know. And I didn't know of him. Except for the proliferation of a lot of English chat shows, like the Graham Norton Show, like Michael McIntyre, being kind of distributed on YouTube, and me being able to see him just appear that way. His music, though, I was utterly not informed about his music and his influence and what he meant to England until I saw him on those shows, and then I saw the previews come out, and I was like, oh, this seems pretty cool. And the hook that is in this movie is the thing that's probably going to make you go see it as well, because it is a music documentary that seems to be completely combined with Planet of the Apes. As you saw, if you're watching the video version of the podcast, which is available on YouTube at Powell Not Found. This is coming from the director of The Greatest Showman, which we did review on our second episode of the show, which is a movie musical with Hugh Jackman, and that deals with Barnum and Bailey, right? Ringling Brothers? Barnum and Bailey? Ringling Brothers? I'm forgetting. But deals with P.T. Barnum, and his rise as a showman. This is the same director. And if you watch this movie for all of 10 minutes, you can start drawing the parallels, right? If you watch Greatest Showman, you realize that musical is all about spectacle. This particular movie is set up in the same way, except it is visually spectacular, but kind of punctuated by the wit and by the sardonic nature of Robbie Williams. Now, again, I don't think it's an unfair assessment to say that Robbie Williams hasn't exactly permeated American culture that much. He's said so himself on all those various chat shows that he's been on, that he is just not known in Los Angeles, right? People don't know who he is. I knew him after this movie. I was explaining after I saw this that he's one of those artists where when you hear the song in the movie, in the musical, in the music, in the movie, I want to say musical, but it's not really a musical. When you hear his music, you start saying to yourself, oh, he wrote this, right? Angels is a very, very famous song I remember hearing when I was very, very young. I didn't realize it was Robbie Williams when I was 8 years old as it was released. But it is one of those movies that you go, oh my God, I can't believe he wrote this. No wonder he's so big, right? It's kind of strange that he hasn't permeated more of American culture, more, because some of his songs are fantastically good. The visual representation of the beats of his life are incredible. This is kind of what, if you were listening to the podcast last week, we watched the Bob Dylan movie earlier in the year, and we kind of complained that the Bob Dylan movie didn't have, they were so true to what his life would have been like at the time. that they didn't give you any kind of hook, and they didn't give you any kind of drama to hold on to keep your interest. That's not going to happen in this movie. This movie is chock full of drama. If you know anything about Robbie Williams' life, I mean, he's struggled with addiction. He's had family problems from the time he was very, very young. His battle with his inner demons is very, very much on display in this particular movie, and very much depicted in a really interesting way. You're definitely going to have beats and emotional things to hold on to throughout this movie that Dylan didn't. Then couple all of those dramatic moments with the stylistic choice of making him not casting an actor that looks like him, but using the conceit that he is not as evolved as he should be, and therefore is played by this like half man, half ape CGI visual thing, is really, really, really clever. I mean, it's at first when I went into the movie, my interest was piqued just because I thought it was. I was like, I'd like to see this. This is I'm kind of intrigued always by the Planet of the Apes movies and how they can kind of convey so much emotion through the CGI motion capture. In this particular case, it was just funny to me to see all these actors play it so straight, right? Like they can't see this visual depiction in front of them. They just see regular Robbie. And so all the actors play it so straight. It was also clever to me that there was such self-deprecation in the main character's mind that's what he thought of himself. And so they visually depicted it that way, that he wasn't as evolved, that he was kind of not really that much of a man, or he's not a grown-up, or not quite. He's like the middle state of that famous evolution picture, right, where it goes from monkey to man. And that to me was clever enough to get me in the door, right, and to make me buy a ticket. They do such a good job with the motion capture that at times you forget that you're watching that contrast on screen. You start really investing in this half man, half ape character. You really start feeling for his emotion. It really drives the emotional part of the film more than you might think it does. And it visually gives them liberty to depict things that I think, had he been a human character, that it might have been harder to watch and harder to get through those more emotional beats. There is a beautiful scene where he's fighting his inner demons that I think, had it been a human actor playing this moment, it visually wouldn't have been easy to kind of get through. And so it's hard to kind of talk about that without spoiling the actual sequence. But it is a very, very clever choice. And when they finally get to it at the end of the movie about why he feels this way, and this has been said in the trailers, right, that he's always felt less evolved. It really pays off. It's not a gimmick. It feels like a gimmick. It looks like a gimmick. It really works in this film. So Michael Gracie, the director who also did Greatest Showman, really, really did a good job using that idiom, monkeys on my back, if you will, to visually depict Robbie Williams' anxiety with becoming famous and becoming who he was. I think it's a brilliant choice. I think it's something that the Dylan movie needed, something visually to make it less real, to make it feel bigger than it actually is, and something that I compared last week. The Elvis movie did do. Baz Luhrmann did do a good job stylistically making a choice to dramatize this thing a little bit bigger than it probably was, but to keep you going throughout the movie. This movie does what I wanted the Dylan movie to do: make a choice, make a bold choice in a direction to make it a little bit more exciting. And this movie, Better Man, pulls it off brilliantly. The music itself, there is a sequence they they showcase Let Me Entertain You, this one, and Angels predominantly in the film, and it looks like they have redone a lot of the music from the recordings. I mean, it doesn't sound very similar. I listened to the actual recordings after listening to it, and it seems like they've redone them in some sort of way to kind of the fit the movie. But one of the things that I think really stood out was the choreographed sequence of this one. I didn't know the song before I actually watched the movie. What they did with it and how they paired it with him meeting his first girlfriend, Nicole, from another British band that I had no idea existed. I think, just to give you a comparison of just how siloed we all can be in our own kind of music industry, is that even when they said, "Oh, you're this person," and then they made the grand reveal, completely was lost on me who that was and why it was significant. But when he meets his first love interest, the choreography and what they do to kind of progress through their lives through that first number. This is a sequence on a boat, and they do the song "This One." Probably one of the best sequences I've ever seen in a movie since the movie Up did it in about 6 minutes in the beginning of the film and really progressed through people's lives. So the time lapse and the choreography in that scene is absolutely excellent. I was really taken aback too by how much I related to Robbie Williams, right? Not as just a former person who's been on stage as a performer. You're always trying to fight back imposter syndrome, and you're trying to fight back, is this good enough, or am I good enough? And he does a really good job about visually depicting that in the movie and making you relate to his plight, even though we might people. The audience members are not going to be in the same field, but you can definitely feel for this character in that moment because they punctuate not only visually him having the anxiety, but he tells you because Robbie Williams does do the voiceover and punctuates parts of the movie to kind of get more points across. So I think it was just an excellent looking film. It was just the right amount of time too. I feel like now I go into films with a little bit of a fear that they're going to be 2 hours, 3 hours long, and I'm not going to get out of there, or there's going to be moments where I'm like, okay, I gotta get up and go to the bathroom. This movie has been going on for 2 hours and 45 minutes. Here's looking at you, Irishman. But this movie kind of didn't overstay its welcome. It really hit all the beats that I think Robbie Williams wanted it to hit. And they really hit the relationships that they wanted to showcase in this particular case. Also, a very interesting little point coming out of this movie is that Robbie Williams doesn't hold back in showing how much admiration he had for Sammy Davis Jr., Frank Sinatra, and Dean Martin in this particular case. I think those were the three. And those Rat Pack group of singers and how much they influenced him growing up. I don't think that's something that's very unrelatable, although it did make me realize just how global those guys were. Because you think of them as just like an American, phenomenon, right? Like, oh, it's the Rat Pack. But you don't realize just how global American culture is. American Hollywood culture and those singers, until you start seeing other people from other countries start idolizing them. I think Michael Bublé had the same kind of influences, but it's no different, I guess, than me idolizing the Beatles growing up, and idolizing Paul McCartney, and idolizing the Rolling Stones and all these people that as rock stars. It's just funny to see that turned on its head, because when you think of Robbie Williams' music, you don't necessarily think Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, or Sammy Davis Jr. in some cases, but like maybe because he has such more of a pop style, you don't think that they're hearkening back to that, but they do explain that during the movie, and yeah, it's just fantastic. I think it's something we mentioned last week that Hollywood seems to be kind of on a roll of remaking biographies about music stars. They are the new superheroes. They are. I don't know what this next generation of music movies are going to be, but they are definitely hitting this kind of trend to showcase some of these music stars. And this one really pulled it off, right? If it wasn't a biography of someone's life, I would want a sequel of this movie because it's so well done, and there's something about the visual depiction of him looking like this. It's gonna stick in my mind forever. They did something so different that I didn't think was necessarily possible to flip the formula on its head, that it's going to stick with me for a long time. It's a really good movie. I would go see it. So again, that's Robbie Williams' biography, Better Man, which is directed by Michael Gracie. It is, all in all, it is a great way of introducing Robbie Williams to the American audience. And I hope this movie takes off. I think it really deserves to take off. But again, just like the Dylan movie ended up, I ended up buying an album of Bob Dylan, the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, and listening to it. It did the thing it needed to do: sell Dylan records, a complete unknown. I hope this does the same thing with Robbie Williams. I definitely went back home, went onto YouTube Music, went onto Spotify, and listened to Robbie Williams, specifically Angels, the song Feel, Let Me Entertain You, and then ended up watching more things about him and learning more about it. What I hope this movie does is that it introduces a whole new country to maybe the music that we've been sleeping on a little bit, because they've certainly packaged it in a very fun, entertaining, kooky way to prime you for more, if you will, which is exactly what these movies have to do. I was really glad I went to see it at an Alamo. So they, if you've ever been to an Alamo theater, they tend to have like a 30-minute pre-show before, and they were playing music video after music video of Robbie Williams. And it was getting you kind of ready for what you were about to see, because even his music videos are bizarrely clever and bizarrely, they're just so weird. Like they're funny, they have a funny element to them. So yeah, I couldn't recommend this movie highly enough. Again, Better Man comes out next week, I think, fully into theaters. A limited release this week, January 10th. And yeah, go see this movie because it's definitely worth your time. So when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about Ringo's new album, Look Up, which is a country album. And we will wrap up the show for this week. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.